Let's go. So hi, everyone. I'm really happy to welcome you on our webinar. Today, we will talk about enhanced conversion tracking. And my name is Nastasia. I will do now like a short introduction, and then I will give a word to Dan. And yes, we will jump to the most interesting part. So what will happen today? Firstly, we will give you some super brief overview of what enhanced conversions superpower is and when best to use it. Then we will have actually like a live demo on how to do the setup, and we will also include some latest updates from Google. We will comment them, and in the end, we will spend some time on the questions and answers. After the webinar, not right after, I will point it out now, early next week, we will send you the webinar recording. We will send you written guides on how to do the setup, and also we will send you a link where you will get like all written questions and answers, and you will have a space where you can send additional questions, and we will actually support you. So who will be with you today? Firstly, it's Dan. He will do the live demo. He will tell you everything, walk you through the whole process. And also, we have here Alex and Vlad. They will take care of you in the chat, not in the chat, but in the Q&A. So there you can leave your questions during the webinar, the presentation, and guys will reply to you and guide you if needed. And yes, but actually, before we start, I want just to briefly tell you what is Stape. And yes, for those who is new today. So firstly, Stape, yes, it's a hosting provider, but actually we are all-in-one solution for all things server-side. And we developed and keep on developing a lot of scripts, custom tags, variables, plugins, everything to make your life easier. Actually, the data tracking life, I don't know if I may say this, but yes, everything to boost your data tracking setup and to help you to do this setup with ease. We are young but strong, and actually now a lot of clients, agencies, businesses, marketeers trust us, use us, and all over the world, and we actually happy to this. And yes, now then, the stand is yours, and please share your screen and enjoy.
Okay.
Super fast.
Yeah, that was pretty quick. Thank you. All right, let me launch this as well. We did the slideshow. You guys should see this, right? So, hi everyone, I'm Dan. It's nice to introduce me. Today we're going to talk about enhanced conversions, overview, use cases, updates. I should warn you, we don't want to waste your time on like empty lectures and abstractions. So the focus of this would be practical implementation. But of course, we'll go through some, high-level concepts before we dive into that. So what are the superpowers of the enhanced conversions and why you even want that? There's pretty much two features to this, two cases that that you benefit from when using enhanced conversions. First is very, very straightforward, and this is mostly what we'll be talking about today, is just supplement your existing conversion tracking with first-party data if you're, if at all possible. This will just make sure that, apologies, wrong slide. This will just make sure that Google is optimizing your campaigns better. This indirectly affects your return on ad spend and overall only provides you with the good stuff, right? Attributing offline conversions, the second case is a situation where by the presence of the user data, you can actually stitch offline data to online data. An example of this would be a lead form submission on your website, tracked and delivered to Google Ads, and then some sort of offline conversion that happened, after that, so outside of website engagement. So you can send that conversion to Google with the same user data that you've reported online, and that way Google will stitch your offline conversion to the original campaign without you necessarily providing the click ID, because in most situations that will not be possible. So we will touch on this offline stitching, but the topic of the webinar is enhanced conversions, not offline conversions. So I'm going to describe them in general, give you some examples. but we're not going to be setting up offline conversions today. Right. So this is a funny slide, but you should actually always do this, right? When best to use enhanced conversion? The answer is always, with a small waiver there that says if your local regulations allow for it and if the customer has provided you with consent to do that. If those two things are taken care of, there's absolutely no downside for you utilizing this functionality with Google. You can only benefit from it. Like, worst case scenario is you will see no change, but I don't think we've ever seen such a case. Enhanced conversions usually brings some uplift to the customers. Right. And like I said, we're not going to dwell too much on abstractions and giving you lectures. So I'm going to switch to live demo. So we're going to be dealing with containers, implementation, Google Ads, and stuff like that. So let me stop the slide and go to the containers. So we are going to be focusing on setting up Google Ads today. This assumes that you already have your GA4 implementation ready the way I do right now. If that is not the case for you, you can find the recording of our previous webinar where we literally created this container, and there's also templates, links to the templates included, so you can easily get to this stage where we're starting from today. So I'm not going to dwell a lot on Shopify specifics, on how you do the data layers with our application, how you set up GA4. Like I said, we're assuming that is already done, and we'll be focusing on user data and Google Ads in general. So like I said, we have GA4 set up. We have our server container with GA4. There's no Google Ads going on in these two containers altogether. So let's start setting this up. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the conversion linker. This is just a basic thing. I'm going to do it in the server container. There's no setup needed here. We just need to create it as an entity, which I'm going to do. So let's say conversion linker. And we're pretty much going to trigger it on all GA4 events for simplicity. Okay, with this means that each time the server container receives a hit, like a page view or any event with a gclid in the URL, an appropriate cookie will be set by the conversion linker. That is why we set it up. Right, the next step would be create conversion actions, create tags, populate them with user data. So let's start with Google Ads side, actually. We'll switch here. This is our fresh Google Ads account. This is a demo one. There's you can see there's not much going on here. There's no recent conversions on a single action. So let's create a few. I'm going to pick website. I'm going to give it our domain here. This is our test shop. You're going to see it soon. Let's say scan. We're not going to be dealing with this because we're going to create our conversion action manually. So click this. And we're going to create 3 today. We're going to play with purchase. So let's call it something like this, purchase. We're going to give it a default 1, doesn't matter, count each conversion. And this is the important part. Our enhanced conversions are managed through Google Tag Manager, as you just have seen. I will show you a little bit later in the settings where you turn this on. So this is our purchase conversion. Ready? Let's also create an add to cart, because I feel like that's a very common case for secondary conversion that people use. So add to cart, primary, doesn't matter, enhanced conversions managed through Google Tag Manager. And then the last one is we're going to do submit a lead form. And this is the example we're going to talk about stitching with offline data and such. So let's do SGTM lead. Let's use the same value. I don't know, doesn't matter for this purpose. Again, enhanced conversions are handled through GTM. Let's save that, and we can hit save and continue. In here, we obviously care about using Google Tag Manager, so we want to grab the conversion ID and the conversion labels here. So first things first, let's grab the ID. Let's copy it, go to our server container, and since we're going to be tidy and professional and everything, I'm going to give it into a variable. So this is a constant, and this is our conversion ID. It's already plugged in. So there's nothing to say. All right. Now let's grab some labels. Let's do purchase first. Going to go in a dedicated folder because I'm crazy like that. And let's create a new tag, Google Ads, conversion tracking. Okay, guys are telling me the picture is too little. Let me know if this made it better. Must have. Right? Can someone confirm you can see the picture well, please? Okay, I'm gonna assume it's all right, and you guys will tell me if anything happens. So continuing with our flow here, right? We're going to add a conversion ID to our tag. We are also going to copy the conversion label for purchase and plug it here. Conversion value currency code, we're not going to touch. All of this will be inherited from the GA4 hits. So that is taken care of for you. We can tick these two checkboxes just to be safe. Again, everything will be pulled from event data. You don't need to do nothing specific. Let's give it a trigger. This will be our GA4 purchase event. And lastly, let's give it a name. So I'm going to call it something like this, ads purchase. You can see there's no settings regarding user data or enhanced conversions or anything. And I understand this might be confusing if you open up this tag, but I'm going to show you how to deal with this and what to do. Ads purchase done. May have stale data. Please refresh again. Okay. Apologies for that. Using multiple accounts here, that's why there's stale data. If you ever get that warning, just refresh and you'll have to do your last action anew. So you can see there's no tag. So let's quickly replicate what we just did. Conversion tracking. Let's put our label for the ID. Let's grab that label again. Give it a trigger. And name it. This is now saved. So we're going to do pretty much the same for our add to cart. So I'm copying a tag just to save some time. We're going to use the same conversion ID, obviously. We just need to switch the label to a correct one. So we're going to use this, add to cart. Put it into this box, change the trigger to add to cart. Save, and add to cart is out of the way. Let's create the last one, and then we'll switch to interesting stuff. So actually, I don't think I have a trigger for it. But anyway, yeah, let's create the trigger first. Let's create a new trigger, say custom event, and this is going to be generate lead because this is a native event in GA4. So we're going to utilize that. So I'm going to name this generate lead. And now I can create my conversion tag. So again, I'm going to copy the existing one to save some time. And let's do lead. Obviously, we want to switch the label once again. This one. And put it in a corresponding box like this. Give it a proper trigger. And save it. Now, in terms of Google Ads tags, you're actually done. This is your final state of a Google ad. Let's do these two checkboxes here. This is your final kind of state of a Google Ads tag. Now we just need to make sure that the server container is also receiving user data and that our tags can fire with that user data, right? So for that, I'm going to switch to the web container because obviously the web container is our source of signal. And I'm going to be launching preview soon. So here's the situation. Let's go visit the website. Shop Stape Agency. So we'll launch a demo Shopify page. There's not much going on here. Let me close this. Okay, and let's trigger that add to cart real quick and see what we got. So we have in our data layer an add to cart event, which has all the product data and everything, and we're firing GA4 towards our server container with that payload, right? There's no user data for the add to cart event because I'm not signed in, I'm not logged in, but we're going to mock it. So here's what needs to happen. In the web container, there's a variable called user provided data. This is a native template. You don't need to download it or anything. this is it, right? Let's actually delete this and just show you the entire process. Okay, it's reference here. Just apologies. Give me 1 second. And delete this. Jesus. Okay, there you are. Save. All right, so I'm going to create it, right? We're going to create a new variable. We're going to pick user provided data. It's closer to the bottom. And we're going to do manual configuration, so nothing automatic. We don't like automatic. We want to be explicit. And we just need to map out these fields here. So email, phone, name, address, and everything. So I'm going just to pick the variables that are already created in the container. I'm going to do email, phone number. And again, I want to stress out, if it's confusing what's going on right now and where I'm getting all of this information and such, you can revisit our last webinar on how you do GA4 and ads on Shopify. And all of this will be explained to you. And like I said, there's templates so you can easily get to this stage. Meanwhile, I'll continue populating these fields here. To have street, city. This is really not the most convenient way, but this is what Google blessed us with. So city, region, country, and finally postal code, which would be zip. Okay. I'm going to call it the way I call things. So user provided data, simple as that. Now, the idea is this variable needs to be included into your GA4 heads. So into a thing that delivers signal to your server container, right? And let's do add to cart for now, since that is what we played with. So there's 2 ways to do it. Google has made it kind of more user-friendly. So there's this checkbox in every single GA4 tag, include user-provided data from your website. Fair warning, this does not mean that this user data is going to be sent to GA4. We're going to talk about user data in GA4 a little bit later, and I'm going to show you things. This only means that this information will be delivered to the server container. If your GA4 is not set up to accept that user data, it won't. So you're not like risking anything here before you do any settings. So you tick this checkbox, you select our variable, user provided data, the one we just created. You can read some fluff from Google here. It will tell you it's all going to be good, like I did. So, and we're going to save that. Now, since we did changes, we're going to relaunch the web preview. But before I do that, let's launch the server preview. Okay, with this open, we can actually launch the web one and go to our website. I am going to do the same add to cart situation. So let's land here. Let's add this to cart. So here's the entire flow of data, right? We triggered an add to cart on the website. We have our data layer push signifying that event. A GA4 has fired towards our server container. This has been received by the server container here, claimed by the GA4 client, and our add set to cart tag has fired. We can open this up and we will see 2 things. No, before we go there, actually, let's look at the event data, right? This is the entire event data we sent, and there you go. Here's my user data included into it. You can see that the key is user underscore data. This is the standard one that Google uses. So if on an event that triggers your conversion tag, there is this object available, Google Ads will automatically pick it up and send it along with the conversion. That is why we discussed a couple of minutes ago, you don't have any settings in the server-side tags for populating the user data. There's no checkboxes, there's no drop-downs, there's nothing. It will just parse it automatically from the event data. Right. So we looked at the event data. We can see that we have this object. By the way, this object is created by that variable, right? That's why you have this like brackets and a tag mode manual and everything. Now let's look at the Google Ads tag itself. So this is the tag that fired. You can see that it actually only sends signal from the browser. Now, to those unaware, server-side Google Ads tags are actually hybrid tags. They will send signal from the server and or from the browser. In our specific case, it sent a request from the browser, which we're going to look at. There is no documentation outlining the logic of which one is firing or why multiple fires. This is determined fully by Google. This is their proprietary stuff, so we don't know. I'm just describing to you the behavior. Now, how can we validate that the user data was actually sent with this hit of ours, right? We can look at this request. We can copy this, go to our browser, open the network tab. Network, and let's search for that request. We're not going to find it because we opened the network tab too late. So let's refresh. And let's trigger an add to cart while we have our network tab open. We can do it again. Again, the same situation occurs, right? We have our data layer push, GA4 delivers information to the server. We grab it here on the server and we fire our add to cart. So we'll look into this tag again. We copy the signal that it sent this time, and we just put it into this filter here. And you will find this is the actual request, the actual conversion that goes to your Google Ads. This is there will be our conversion ID, there will be our conversion label. But the thing you're looking for is this EM, which obviously stands for email. And this is a little bit transformed, but a hash of my email, pretty much. So if you see this parameter here, that means you have actually successfully sent user data, in this case, only email, because that's the only thing I provided. You have successfully sent it to Google Ads. Right. So further steps for validation, right? I'm going to play with purchase as well and show you that, but further steps for validation real quick. So we're done with this, obviously. And if you go to your conversion actions, they are all inactive right now because I only just created them, and they will, they will activate once they receive some signal, and it requires some time. What's going to happen though, and a good signal for you will be is once it's active, it will be green and everything. And in this window, it will say enhanced conversions are being received, and there will be a green checkbox, right? That again is a kind of a confirmation that user data is constantly being received. Warning here, in this particular interface, that checkbox will not appear immediately, and it might not appear in 3 hours, like they say. You may need to wait a couple of days before you can actually see that there, right? But then again, your most direct validation would be looking at those network requests like we just did, because that, that is at the core level that confirms that you're sending that confirmation there. So let's go back to our web container. Let's do the same for purchase, right? We have our user data object, variable rather, sorry, which creates an object. It's all mapped out to grab the data from the data layer. So in order to do this for purchase, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. I'm going to open the GA4 tag, and I'm going to tick this checkbox, and I'm going to select a variable. For those like old school and hardcore, just to show you it's not even a trick, just a quirk. So you can forget about this, and you can actually type user data here, because we know the key, and you can see Google even validated it with this checkbox. And we can do GA4 user provided data like this. There's absolutely no technical difference. Like, this is your preference. Most of our setups from before, since this checkbox was not available, we'll use this as a key. I believe it's also the same in the template that you can download, but just know that they are interchangeable. Absolutely. So let's save it for the purchase. Let's relaunch our preview because we did some changes. And let's buy that t-shirt. Again, let's go t-shirt. I already have some in the cart. Let's buy all 3. All right. Let's give it some data. Valid zip for Montana. This will be this, I guess. And the test credit card, because this is a demo website, so nothing's going on here. Pay now. Let's also actually open the inspect tab maybe we'll have the time to catch the thing. Right. Again, same situation. I believe you guys are familiar with this at this point, but we have our purchase push in the data layer. We have our GA4 tag firing. Within that GA4 is my full user data provided on checkout. This is all grabbed from the data layer. This gets delivered to our server container with a purchase event. We fire a purchase conversion. Again, we only have the browser hit this time, so I can copy this, find it here. This is it. And we can see there's EM and a bunch of data there, right? You can see Ontario is not hashed because, well, we don't need to do it. There's also US, which is recognizable. But overall, this huge hash contains all the user data that I just, that I just populated. This also kind of confirms that they indeed hash the data and they're not sending it explicitly or anything like that, if anyone is paranoid. So we've done purchases, we've done it to cart, we've done purchase, and we've set it up on the Google Ads side, right? The last conversion we created was a lead, and the reason I created that was for a specific case, which I'm going to show you in a second. So we receive a lot of questions, and I believe this was feedback on the previous webinar that people want to understand how they can grab some user data from a page if it's not available in the data layer. I'm going to use a very rudimentary example for it. Let me launch preview again, and we're going to use the newsletter form that we have on the bottom of the page. So this one here, right? So in order to grab an email here on form submission, you're going to use some very simple JavaScript magic. So I'm going to inspect this particular element, the box. And we're going to find in the console that this is an element of a type input that has an ID, has a type, email, has a name, and all of that we can target. So here's me doing that, and the script I'm going to use for it is a simple one, and guys will share it in the chat once we're done. So let me grab it real quick. I'm going to use document selector. Just not this. So I'm going to use document selector, and I'm going to search for that particular element of ours, right? So document selector, we're looking for input with a name that equals the name of that element. If I add dot value to it, you will see that this returns then at Stape.io, which is what I've put into the box. Now, all of that doesn't mean much to you. Let's practically use it in a situation, right? So let's close that preview because we're going to do changes again. And first and foremost, we want to track that form submission. So in order for GTM to show you form submit events, we actually need to create a trigger of that type. So let's do form submit generic. I'm not going to do any like clarifications here. We're just going to assume we're going to fire it on all forms. Now, with that out of the way, I'm going to create a variable. Actually, let's go to folders and be neat about it. So I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to select custom JavaScript. We're going to name it CGS, which stands for custom JavaScript, and email address. So when you're doing these, you always need to wrap them in a function like this. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to target by type this time, not by name. So we're going to do this. And I'm going to explain it in a second and demonstrate it, of course. So very simple. We're being tidy. So we're checking if such an element exists on page. If it does exist, we're returning its value, right? We just run this in console. So the expectation is it's going to work here as well. Let's save that. And let's see what, let's actually see what happens. We can then create a tag real quick. Let's go to that page. Let's type my email here. Now let's actually submit it. Right, so I'm now subscribed to a newsletter, and here's what happened on the container level. So on our form submission event here, our variable of CGS email address has returned my email successfully, which means that if we fire a tag on this event and we populate it with this variable, we're going to be passing the user data, that user input, into that field. So let's just go ahead and do it. We already created a trigger, so let's create a GA4 event. Again, I'm going to copy an existing tag just to save some time. But when you're doing this, just be careful because you might leave, some stuff that you don't need here, maybe not change the event name. So always double check things twice. We're going to do generate lead. Again, generate lead is a native event definition from GA4. We don't have value currency items or anything. And we need to change this to trigger on our form submission. And of course, we're providing it with the user data. However, what's happening right now is we're providing it with the user data that we're picking up from the data layer, and this is not our case, right? So we're actually going to create another variable like this. Let's hit new. And we're just going to give it email for this demonstration. If you had a form, let's say this is a big lead form where you put more of the personal data, you could grab it the same way and of course populate it here. So I'm going to name this again, GA4 user provided data. Then I'm going to specify lead just to distinguish it from our other stuff. And for this specific tag, I'm going to use that GA4 user provided data lead so that we pick up on the correct data point. Nothing here, nothing is needed. We're inheriting our settings here through the variable just to send it to the server container. So that's all good. We can now test it. So let me relaunch preview again. Stape agency. Right, and let's submit this. I'm not sure if it did it. No, just load it. Okay. Yes, I am a human. Oh, geez, I'm not gonna do that. We have our form submission, and that's good enough. So it has fired multiple times here. Let's look at this, for instance. This is our generate lead event. You can see that the only payload for it, except for the event name, is our user data object with the correct email, which we pulled with a custom JavaScript, as can be seen here. Right? This got delivered to our server container as per usual, and we have fired our generate lead tag here. This time you can actually see there's an ongoing request from the server and not from the browser. Like, wow. But inside it, the same idea, you can see the EM parameter, which signifies that we've actually sent some user data to Google. In this case, it's shorter because we've only sent email. So this is a high-level demonstration of how you can pull user data from your pages directly with just custom JavaScript. If you like Google document query selector, there's a bunch of material out there on Google, like things like ChatGPT will help you out there as well. So I suggest, you experiment and such. So we did all three conversions and covered those cases, right? We talked about verification and the most straightforward one with looking at the network and everything. So let's go to, just give me a second to collect my thoughts. Yeah, let's talk leads. Let's talk what's called enhanced conversions for leads and that offline stitching with the online situation that we talked about, right? That I mentioned originally in the presentation. So the way it works, we need to go to our Google Ads account first, and we need to hit some settings, I believe preferences. Not that, sorry, Google Ads changes their interfaces like every other day, I think. So, okay, we need to go to goals, where our conversions reside, and go to these settings here. In these settings, you will find two things regarding enhanced conversions. There's enhanced conversions, the normal ones, which we just used with you in all of our tags. We have turned this on, and there's Google Tag Manager selected. There's a couple of options there, and it is saved and applied. As a separate sort of option, you have enhanced conversions for leads, which I can turn on as well. Now I'm going to pick Google Tag Manager as well. Now, this does not mean that in order to send user data for lead conversion, you need to turn this off. This might be confusing. So no, if you're just reporting your lead events and you want to use them with user data, We just did it. You don't need this setting. Enhanced conversions for leads is Google naming for that capacity to stitch online with offline via the user data. The way it works is you report a lead like we just did with an email online. And if I had a click ID, if I landed on a page from an advert, I would send this conversion obviously with a click ID. So my lead conversion would have a click ID and my user data. The expectation is that then further down the road, that lead eventually converts and let's say buys something in your brick and mortar store, or maybe you sell over the phone or whatever. They convert outside of website engagement, right? They convert offline. And previously, in order to report that successfully to Google Ads, you would have to supplement the click ID so that they can actually attribute it to a campaign. Now, you no longer have to do that because in reality, it's complicated to expose that click ID for it to be available when offline conversion happens. So Google will stitch it by the user data, right? We report from online with my email and my click ID, and then we report from offline with just my email. That gives Google the capacity to understand that this conversion can actually be associated to the original campaign, which brought me as a lead. So this is what Google means when they talk about enhanced conversions for leads. So now this is saved. We enabled this. I'm not going to use it much, but this is just to explain to you the concept and why there are two separate settings in your Google Ads account. So don't get alarmed or anything. Now, the last item I'm going to show you in the container is a separate tag that can be very confusing to people, and we're going to talk about it counterpart on the web as well. So you may have seen when you're creating a tag, server or web, doesn't matter, it's the same, and you pick Google Ads, you will find this Google Ads user provided data event, which has 0 input except for conversion ID, which let's give it ours. And let's call it ads user provided. That doesn't matter, like user data, let's call it user data. Let's trigger it on all GA4 events. Why would you do this? And what does this do? So this specific tag is not delivering any conversions, which you may have caught because there's no label here, only the ID, which associates you with an account. The idea of using this tag is giving Google some user data outside of necessarily sending a conversion event. A good example that my colleague suggested to me for this would be, let's say you have a multi-stage lead form, right? There's multiple steps and I only expose my email on step 1 and then the form completes on like step 8 or whatever. And to your Google Ads, you only report successful completion of that form. So let's say step 8 completed. But my email is only available on step 1. So what I would do then is I would send some sort of event with GA4, which would signify step 1. And on that event, I would trigger this tag without any conversions, which would mean no conversion is delivered to Google Ads, but they now know that this session, potentially this click ID is, is associated with a piece of user data. So on step 1, I exposed my email and I sent it to Google with this. On step 9, or whatever we can assume, I actually send my conversion event without any user data. And then Google stitches the two together, right? Or I send an offline conversion, for instance, like we just discussed a couple of minutes ago. And then again, it will not only look for user data within the particular conversion events, it's also going to look into this kind of pool, if I may call it that, of user data to try and find a match there. This is not really well documented. You will not find any proper documentation on the specific tag from Google, so it may be confusing. So again, bottom line is, although it says user provided data and everything, in a default scenario where you're just sending conversions with user data, you don't need to use it. You can ignore it. You will just do it the way we, stale data again, can't say, but funny. You will just use it. You will just do it the normal way, like we just showcased, right? So like you did with add to cart or any other conversion. So again, this tag only makes sense in specific situations where like you have user data on some events which are not reported as conversions, for instance, and then on an actual conversion event, you don't have access to that user data. utilizing this would help, well, you or Google rather stitch those two together. Let's discard that. Okay, with that out of the way, let's discuss enhanced conversions data in GA4. So July, I believe, there were some updates on enhanced conversions, which actually there were, let me switch here. There were three, really. There's enhanced data collection in GA4 itself, enhanced conversion for leads via SGTM, which is the tag I just showed you. So item 2 was this tag, a confusing thing, user provided data event. We just talked about it. They also made it so that enhanced conversions can be now used in hotel campaigns. That's the entire change. There's not much to tell you there. If anyone, does Horeca, you can utilize that now. Kudos to you. Now, enhanced data collection in GA4 itself. This is supposed to pretty much bridge the gap for those using conversions imported from GA4. So right now, if you create a conversion action in Google Ads and you don't report to it directly, like we did, but you want to import it from your GA4 property, such a conversion until July could not utilize the power of enhanced conversions, the power of user-provided data. Since July, it now can, if you authorize your GA4 to actually accept and process it. And you do it with a few simple steps. You go to your GA4 property, such as the one I created here, and you go admin, data collection. And down here, user provided data collection beta, we want to turn it on. Automatically detected is fine. Google will attempt to grab some stuff from the page as well. That's okay. So we turned it on. This is turned on. User data acknowledgement, I acknowledge. Acknowledged, okay. Google knows I did the thing. And then you want to go to data streams. Pick the one you're using. At the bottom, there will be configure text settings. Oh, I don't have permission. Again, multiple accounts. I'm very sorry, everyone, for wasting your time like this, but I will need to log in again. Yes, so let me switch. Here we are. So we go to data streams, like I said. Data stream, configure text settings. And in here it says allow user provided data capabilities. So you click that and you also enable this stuff. By default, I think it will be turned off for you and you hit save. Now, everything we just did has made it so that your GA4 will accept, digest, and process that enhanced user data. The way you send it to GA4, we pretty much already discussed. It's the same way. You add it to your existing GA4 tags, such as we did to purchase or add to cart, and it will all be picked up automatically, so long as you're sending it. So like include provide user data, this, or we send it like this when I showed you another option, right? Doesn't matter, we can do both. An invalid input, it's annoying. But that's the entire idea. You don't need to do anything additional to feed your Google Analytics with user data. You just start sending it with your GA4 events, which you already did for the benefit of Google Ads. And that would be it, really. And like I said, the biggest benefit of this being in Google Ads is just so that people who use imported conversions can actually benefit from user data from enhanced conversions. To add to that, we will never suggest you use that because direct reporting to Google Ads is much, much better, much more precise, and you will have less discrepancies and less question marks happening rather than importing it from GA4. So if you want to consider best practice is to send it via the Google Ads tags directly, not use imported conversion from GA4. And I think that concludes most of it. Oh, the other change, I promised the customer to show this to everyone. So another of updates on Google in terms of verification of you sending the enhanced conversions is you go to diagnostics And if this wasn't an empty account, I'll show you another one. You would see this box here, enhance conversions, and you can click see details, which would pull up this interface for you. So it will tell you excellent, or maybe, well, maybe not excellent in terms of enhanced conversion setup is active and optimized. It will show you a graph of, user data being sent by the date. And this table, which probably will be of most interest to you, there's a coverage in percentage and there's a match rate of, how successfully Google can match whatever we're sending to actual users. A word of warning, this particular functionality is fairly new, so there might be bugs, and we've already been reporting that sometimes this just suddenly drops out of nowhere. And yeah, the conversation with support has proved that, again, it may be lagging. So take this with a grain of salt, but I imagine Google will perfect this eventually, and you can use it as a reference to make sure that you're successfully sending user data. So I think I'm done. So we went through the entire thing. We sent some enhanced conversions online. We discussed the confusing tag that Google added for us. We discussed how to verify it, both in the network and on the receiving end in Google Ads. So with that, I'm ready to switch to Q&A, I think. So I'll need some assistance from you guys to let me know the questions and such.
Then actually you can open the Q&A in Zoom, and you will see there Alex left open questions for you.
Okay, let me do that. Okay, perfect.
Where if you see Alex is going to answer this question live, so yes, you can pick it up.
Okay, open 6 questions. So I'm just gonna go from the top, I think, right? Okay, not here. Okay. Apologies, guys. Some technical stuff here. Okay. Which data do we need to enable enhanced conversion tracking? Is email and phone enough, or do we need name, city, street, etc.? Well, you should send as much as possible, really, right? So in your situation, if you do have access to city, street, etc., do send it. But of course, you can imagine that the main sort of stitching agent would be email or phone. So definitely those are of the most priority. It's even kind of evident from the way Google built the variable. You can see that email and phone are in a separate sort of, they're separate boxes, whereas all of this stuff is dumped into address kind of section. So obviously these two will be the most important ones. Email is the core one, and I imagine this is the one you're going to get in most cases. So yes, sending just email is still very, very beneficial, but you should attempt, when possible, to send as much user data as you can. And by the way, this is applicable not only to Google Ads, this is applicable to any other ads destination you're using. So like Facebook, TikTok, affiliates, whatever. If they accept user data, the more you send, the better they can perform, obviously. Can I use server-side tracking exclusively for primary conversions like purchase events? Is this approach recommended? The goal is to minimize server requests. So you technically can. Nothing is stopping you from doing that. And if you run conversion linker in both server container and the web container, like your web conversions will go out with the proper cookie, with the proper click ID, and then your purchase conversion on the server will also go with a proper click ID. Technically, you can. The goal is to minimize server requests, specifically and considering using server-side for purchases while handling events like add to cart through browser-side tracking. Right. So you just, like I said, you can do it technically. Make sure you have conversion linker both sides. Make sure there's no overlap, like you're not over reporting, by accident or anything like that. Make sure there are separate conversion action and such, but definitely you can do it. Just again, the reason I'm telling you need 2 conversion linkers is because the server-side tag will look for one cookie, which is FBG CL AW, and then the client-side tags will be looking for GCL_AW. So they're looking at the different sets of cookies. Keeping that in mind, your situation is possible. What you should be very cautious about in it is you can do it for Google Ads. You cannot and never should do this for GA4. because of what I just described, because server-side heads on GA4 will use one set of cookies, client-side heads on GA4 will use a different set of cookies. What you'll end up having in such a situation is that your purchases will never be attributed to the original sessions or to original users, and your traffic acquisition report would be a huge mess. So never do this for GA4. It should be either client-side or server-side. Technically, you can do it for Google Ads. So that's my answer. Question number 3, can you please show the shared event settings for GA4? Absolutely. So let's actually create a new one just for demo. So we're going to add a new variable and we're going to pick a type. Again, you scroll all the way down and you have Google tag configuration settings, Google tag event settings. Use the event settings. I call it shared event settings, and you can populate it with whatever you like. What you need to do a lot of time, server, container, URL, is do this. And of course, we're going to give it a proper variable. And you want to include this in all the tags. So let me save this and show you the one we already have. The one we already have, not this. The one we already have, as you can see, is referenced in every single tag I have in the container, which essentially the reason we do it is it's kind of a redundancy. Like the server container URL is normally picked up from your configuration tag, but by adding it to let's do it like this, show inherited. But by adding it to all the tags, you're making sure that every single tag will always fire to your server container URL. This eliminates edge cases where potentially there might be situations where an event fires before configuration fires, and that makes it so that your event goes directly to analytics, which brings that situation I just talked about, different set of cookies, misattribution, and everything. So a good practice, like I said, add this with a server container URL to all of your tags. But then again, of course, it doesn't stop at that. Whatever data is shared across multiple events or like a batch of events, you can add here. In this case, we did remarketing parameters. This is also described in the previous webinar, so that every single event we're sending has the page type, total value, and the prod ID for remarketing purposes. So that's your answer. I don't see more questions. Is there going to be any? So I think I'm done then. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to pass the word to Nastya to wrap it up, and I'll see you